There's no such thing as an addictive substance. PMO isn't addictive. Drugs aren't addictive. Nothing's addictive. This is incredible what I'm about to say, but it's absolutely true. Here's the thing, right? When you look at activities, there are no activities which are addictive. It's our relationships to them which creates strong desire. These aren't urges or cravings that come externally. They're things which we view as being pleasurable, as being needing in our lives. Right? So for example, the reason why PMO isn't addictive, it's not, it really isn't, is because the only things that are holding us to it are our own reasons. But you might be like, oh, but PMO releases massive amounts of dopamine and it's a supranormal stimulus and the Coolidge effect keeps us hooked. Here's the thing, there is no qualitative difference between the pleasure of PMO or PMO use and any other type of pleasurable activity or activity in general. There's no qualitative difference. What I mean by that is this, right? So an object that is red and an object that is green are qualitatively different in that they differ because the colors are different. One is red, one is green. That's a different type of thing, right? Same things with different types of animals, right? Or different types of things. They're different in terms of their quality. They're a different category of thing, different category of phenomena. Whereas the argument used to say that some substances are addictive and some aren't is one based on quantity. So let's say I'm a certain height and someone else is taller than me and someone else is shorter than me. We all have the quality of height. We're all different heights. That we're just quantitatively different, right? Whereas we're all qualitatively the same in that we're all human beings with the quality of height. So with addictive substances, there's no such thing as one substance is addictive and one substance isn't. They're all releasing pleasure. They're all having utility in varying amounts, but dependent on us, right? I'm sure you've thought of this before. You're like, okay, why is PMO addictive, but going to the cinema isn't? Both are pleasurable, both release dopamine, both are things that we enjoy, that we see utility in. But then what makes PMO addictive? But PMO is supranormal. It's a supranormal stimulus. Here's the thing about supranormal stimulus, is that it's different. If such a thing does exist, which is even debatable, if it does exist, let's assume it does, it exists because it's supranormal, it's more than normal, but it's still existing within the realm of pleasure. So say, for example, an apple, it's pleasurable, right? Let's say. Pizza is a supranormal stimulus because pizza has the carbohydrates from the pizza base and then the toppings of the cheese, which is high in fat. It's something that doesn't exist in nature, something with that high sugar content and fat content, and therefore it's a supranormal stimulus when we consume it. The same is true. The same argument is given with PMO. PMO, we've got women of different types, different varieties, different quantities, lots, different actions, different scenes, genres. Everything is so much more than what we have in reality, right? So that means it's addictive, whereas the reality isn't. Not true. Untrue. The reason being is because you've just created a comparison based on scale as opposed to type. You're making a qualitative claim based on quantitative differences. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like saying a person who weighs 80 kilos is strong, whereas a person who weighs 60 kilos isn't strong. Well, that's not true. The person who weighs 80 kilos might be stronger than the person who weighs 60 kilos, but they both have the quality of strength. Do you get what I mean? It's just that one is stronger than the other. So I'm not by any means saying that PMO is more pleasurable or more addicting than normal sex. None are addicting. None of them are. The point is that either all of them are addictive or none of them are. This is the new point, right? That now this is where we're building forward in our argument. Before we were saying that PMO is addictive, whereas normal sex isn't, or going to the cinema isn't, because PMO is a supernormal stimulus. But I've just said that that's a quantitative difference, and you're making a qualitative claim. You're saying that they're different categories of things, when in reality they're the same category of thing, just in varying quantities. Do you see what's going on? So now the argument becomes, okay, well, either sex is addictive, cinema is addictive, and PMO is addictive, or none of them are. And this brings onto a separate point about why nothing is addictive, right? This is the new point. And the first point is that there is no such thing as a qualitatively different thing known as an addictive substance. And the second point, right, is everything addictive, or is it just, or are none of the things addictive? The point is that addiction, right, at its core, if you're addicted to something, you're compelled beyond your will to use it, or you're given urges or cravings, right? The truth is that cravings and urges come from our reasons and our beliefs that motivate us, and not the chemical action of the substance. The reason being is because the chemical action of the substance produces these habit loops in our brain that are nothing more than actual habit learning. It's a natural part of the human brain to adapt and have neural plasticity, but this does not compel use. The truth is, and you can look in this book, Gene Heyman, A Disorder of Addiction, A Disorder of Choice. This is where I'm getting a lot of this information from. I'm not just pulling out of thin air. In this book, it talks about how the brain loops, the habit loops in our brains, are no different for addictive substances and non-addictive substances. The learning associated with PMO use, i.e., I need PMO in this situation, I need PMO in that situation, versus eating, I like to eat in this situation, I like to eat in this situation, versus learning an instrument, versus learning to become a part of a political ideology, versus learning to drive a car. They're all forms of learning. They're all neurologically the same type of thing. Therefore, how can one be compelling and one not? Doesn't make sense. The truth is that the beliefs tie into it massively. If I believe I need to drive my car to get to the hospital because I'm going to die, let's say my dad, God forbid, is dying, and I need to drive him to the hospital, I'm going to be highly motivated to get in my car and to drive to the hospital. Does that mean I'm addicted to the hospital? Does that mean that I am compelled beyond my will to go to the hospital? No, I'm reasoning in my head. God, I need to do this. I have autonomy. I have the freedom to actually reason. I need to do this. The same is true with PMO. That strong desire isn't an addictive desire. It isn't a compulsion. The desire is the same thing. The desire to drive my dad to the hospital, that strong desire, is the same as the strong desire for PMO. They're all desires based on our reasoning. The reasoning for PMO is I need PMO to relieve stress right now. I need PMO to relieve stress. I need it. Just because that's kind of like an invisible conceptual thing doesn't mean it's all conceptual. When I think I need to drive my dad to the hospital, that's me thinking in my head and reasoning it through very quickly. Fuck, I need to get to the hospital. With PMO, it might be, oh, I've had some trouble at work and now I'm really stressed. I need PMO to get rid of this stress. It's the reasoning that is propelling us forward, that's motivating us. It isn't chemical action of the substance. Chemical action of the substance, all that does is form these habit loops, which I've said are forms of learning, and there's no such difference between an addictive substance and a non-addictive substance. We have our reasons for using substances. A heroin user sees massive value in heroin. They see, oh, it helps me with stress. It helps me deal with my negative emotions. It's a warm blanket that makes me feel like I'm numbing out from the pains of reality. These are all his beliefs. These aren't due to the chemical action of the opioid. They're not. It isn't. That isn't how it works. It's interpretive. It's our relationship with things that create strong desire. It isn't the chemical action of the thing itself. The reason being, as I've just said, they're not the action of anything on your brain. There's no such thing as a category between an addictive substance and a non-addictive substance, and there's no such thing as things are addictive in terms of scale, because what motivates us, what gives us a strong desire, is our reasoning and not the chemical action. We can show that to ourselves through re-reasoning and coming to the conclusion that something's worth it, something's not. Perhaps the beliefs that you have are bunk, perhaps they're not true. The trick with this is what makes PMO really tricky, and I've explained this in another video. This is a massive tangent, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. When you believe PMO is addictive, it becomes addictive. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you believe you need it to solve stress, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And because of this self-fulfilling prophecy effect, even when you have to really strongly entertain the idea that you're wrong, and you have to completely doubt everything in order to experience the alternative self-fulfilling prophecy of PMO isn't that pleasurable. I don't really need it in my life. I don't need it for happiness. I don't need it to de-stress. When you can really open your mind to that possibility, you will then confirm that. That will become your new self-fulfilling prophecy. And so this little self-fulfilling prophecy effect, meaning your belief actually ties into the effect, that really throws a spanner in the works conceptually, because you might know PMO isn't that pleasurable, PMO isn't going to help me de-stress, and yet you might feel it, but you're feeling it because of your belief that you believed your mindset before. So when you change your mindset before, it changes the effect, and then you can realize you're happier without PMO. Hope that makes sense. That's another tangent. To conclude, read the book Addiction, a Disorder of Choice by Gene Heyman, and read Addiction is a Choice by Jeffrey Shaler, and read The Freedom Model, of course. I've got a free link for that in the description. These 3 books are really going to show you, I'm not just putting this all out my arse, like this is all like arguments I've read in these books and that I've really thought about. The ideas being that this idea that some substances are addictive, some aren't, bunk, not true. It's our relationships with things that make them so, that motivate us. Our beliefs about things which motivate us, which give us desire. If there was a door over there and behind that door was £10 million, I'd be highly motivated to get behind that door and get that 10 million. Am I addicted to the 10 million? Am I addicted to the door? Doesn't make any fucking sense. It's just the value that I see in it which produces a strong desire. That's all that's happening. All that's happening. This whole idea of addiction and compulsion is bunk. The reason why people believed it is because other people can't understand why. When you look at a heroin user on the street and you see him being a junkie, you think, this guy must be hooked. There's no way he chooses this life for himself. But what you're failing to understand is that from his perspective, he views heroin as the only thing that makes him happy, and therefore he's willing to pay the heavy consequences for it. And you know this because you're a PMO user and you've experienced the negative consequences of PMO, and yet you still use. So you know that firsthand, and you can then just extrapolate that into a heroin user, and it's the same thing. Other people can't understand it from the outside, but only from the inside. From an inside-out perspective, you understand why you use it, and it's fine. You can debunk that, and you can change your mind. And luckily, thank God, because this is all due to reason and belief, you can change it. If it was due to chemical action on the brain, now you're hopeless. Now you're feeling like shit when you believe that. When you believe that, not because it exists, but that belief keeps you hopeless. It's like believing that. It's like with black pill guys. I used to be like this. Black pill guys are like, oh, I can never have a happy relationship because I'm short and Indian. Not true. Really not true. I've proved that for myself, and now I'm out of that mindset. That concept I've proven wrong in my own head, and therefore I feel less hopeless, far less hopeless, really, really hopeful, really, really good. So do your best to educate yourself. Drop this concept of addiction because it's a load of bollocks. I'm hoping you've sort of found the arguments in this video very compelling. Like, it's like, well, that makes a lot of sense. How could there be such thing as an addictive substance? It doesn't even make sense. There's no such thing as categories of addictive substances. Desire is due to beliefs. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, read those 3 books. After you've read them, get in contact with me on Telegram. I want to talk with guys who really have read this shit and really want to solve this problem. If you're going to message me and not read, I'm not going to be respelling the book out for you. I don't have the time for it. I'm messaging a lot of dudes. I'm doing a lot of work. I really want to really get this content out and show people, go against the NoFap community, because they're just, all the NoFap community are doing are purporting myths which are keeping people trapped. That's the truth. They're purporting myths about addiction that are keeping people bloody trapped. So, hope you enjoyed this. It's a long one. That's it.